Have you ever wondered what happens when you stop showing up? When your silence starts speaking louder than your presence? Most people don't realize the real test of your worth isn't when you're there. It's when you're gone. We'll explain everything in this video, step by step. Don't skip it. Let me ask you something powerful. When was the last time you stepped away and truly saw what your presence meant to others? Most people spend their lives chasing to be seen, to be noticed, to be validated. But few ever realize the profound truth that your absence can often speak louder than your presence ever did. You see, your absence reveals what your presence is truly worth. When you step away from a place, from a relationship, from a circle, from a habit, what happens? Do people notice? Do things crumble, or do they thrive without you? That silence you leave behind, it's feedback. Feedback that tells you how much value you actually added when you were there. Sometimes the greatest realization comes not from being around everyone, but from pulling away and watching who still reaches out. Who still values you when you're not serving their convenience? Because your absence is the most honest test of connection. We live in a world that glorifies presence, be everywhere, do everything, say yes to everyone. But let me tell you something. The strongest people are not those who show up everywhere. They're the ones who know where not to be, and they understand that energy is currency. Attention is power, and your time, it's sacred. When you start valuing your absence, you start valuing yourself. You stop begging for seats at tables where your worth isn't recognized. You stop overgiving to people who only remember you when they need something. You stop performing for attention that never fills you up. Instead, you create space, and in that space you grow. Absence teaches you clarity. It strips away illusion. When you step back, the noise fades and the truth appears. You begin to see who respects your boundaries, who only calls when they benefit, who misses your presence because of what you bring, and who misses you because of who you are. And that's where your transformation begins. Because once you see your worth, you'll never let someone discount it again. Once you understand the power of your silence, you'll never waste your words again. Once you learn the value of walking away, you'll stop begging to stay. Your absence can reset an entire environment. Sometimes people won't appreciate your light until it stops shining on them. Sometimes they won't recognize your consistency until it's gone. And that's okay. Don't chase understanding. Don't explain your withdrawal. When you step back in power, the right people will step forward in respect. You were never meant to be everywhere, for everyone, all the time. You were meant to be impactful, and impact requires distance. Like the sun, it doesn't touch everything directly, but everything thrives under its presence and misses its warmth in its absence. So I challenge you today, withdraw with wisdom. Step back not out of pride, but out of purpose. Remove yourself from where your value is being drained, not celebrated. Watch how your absence shifts energy, exposes truth, and reclaims your peace. Because sometimes your presence builds connections, but your absence, it reveals their depth. And that, my friend, is the value of your absence. Your absence reveals the true worth of your presence. Most people spend their entire lives trying to be seen, to be heard, to be noticed. They attach their value to how much attention they can attract, how often they are needed, how many people depend on them. But the truth is, and the true measure of your presence is only revealed when you're gone. It's in your absence that people realize what you actually meant, what you brought, and how your energy shaped their world. When you step away, the noise stops, and that's when you see what remains. Does the environment lose its spark? Do people start to notice the void? Do things fall apart or continue as if you were never there? That's the raw, unfiltered reflection of what your presence was truly worth. You see, presence is not just about showing up physically. It's about the energy you bring when you're there. Some people walk into a room and the energy shifts. They bring life, clarity, motivation, and light. Others walk in and drain it. When you're constantly present, constantly available, constantly giving, people stop noticing the power of your contribution. Familiarity dulls appreciation. The mind begins to take for granted what it sees all the time. But the moment you step away, everything changes. Absence activates awareness. It wakes people up. It makes them realize what they had, what they lost, and what they might never experience the same way again. Your absence is not about manipulation. It's about measurement. It measures the depth of your influence. It reveals who truly valued you for who you are and who valued you for what you did for them. When you disappear for a while, you see who asks where you went, who checks on you, who feels your absence, and who continues unaffected. The absence becomes your silent teacher. It teaches you who truly sees you and who only uses you. It teaches you how deep your impact runs in the hearts of people around you. And because those who genuinely value your presence will feel your absence like a missing heartbeat. Most people fear absence because they believe if they step away, they'll be forgotten. They think if they don't show up, if they don't constantly remind others of their worth, they'll be replaced. But that belief comes from insecurity, not power. When you know the energy you carry, when you know what your presence brings, you're not afraid to step away. You understand that true value doesn't need constant display. It echoes even in silence. It leaves fingerprints that can't be erased. Your absence becomes a reminder of your strength, not a threat to your existence. Sometimes your greatest lesson isn't in being seen, it's in being missed. When you step back from people, from work, from habits, from environments that drain you, you give space for truth to rise. People start to notice how your energy influenced the flow of things. Maybe you were the peace in the chaos. Maybe you were the one holding everything together. Maybe you were the quiet force that made others feel safe. You only learn this when you're no longer there. Because while your presence creates comfort, your absence creates awareness. Think about the times in your life when you took someone for granted, when their presence felt normal, almost invisible. You expected them to be there, to give, to help, to listen. Then one day they weren't. The silence felt different. The routine felt off. You missed not just what they did, but the feeling of having them around. That's the power of absence. It highlights the invisible value of presence. It turns what was ordinary into something extraordinary in hindsight. The same happens with you. When you step away, people suddenly realize the consistency, warmth, and light you provided. Your absence is also a mirror. It doesn't just show others your worth. It shows you your worth. When you step back and everything collapses, you realize the power you held. When you step back and no one notices, you learn that you were given energy where it wasn't appreciated. Either way, you win. You either discover how impactful you are, or you free yourself from places that never deserved you. Your absence then becomes a form of wisdom. It protects your energy. It clarifies your relationships, and it teaches you balance. There's a reason some people only realize the value of a moment once it becomes a memory. The same applies to people. Your consistent presence can make others blind to your impact, but your absence forces reflection. It makes them appreciate the little things, the smile you gave every morning, the support you offered without asking, the energy you brought that made everything feel alive. It's human nature to see clearly only after losing sight of what was always there. When you start to understand this truth, you stop chasing validation. You stop overextending yourself for recognition. You no longer need to prove your value by constantly being available. Instead, you move with quiet confidence, knowing that your presence doesn't need explanation and your absence doesn't need justification. And you allow yourself to pull back when necessary because you trust that your worth isn't dependent on proximity. It's rooted in essence. You can be gone and still felt, unseen but still remembered, silent but still heard. The most magnetic people are those who understand this balance. They don't force their presence. They allow their absence to speak. They don't beg to be noticed. They let the memory of their energy do the talking. They know that the true test of connection is not how much attention they get when they're around, but how deeply they're felt when they're not. That's why they protect their energy. They give where it's valued, not where it's merely consumed. They choose depth over popularity, quality over quantity, purpose over noise. In a world obsessed with visibility, The power of absence becomes your secret weapon, because while everyone else is fighting to be seen, you'll stand out by being felt, and being felt, that's timeless. Your presence may fade from the room, but your essence lingers in the minds, hearts, and memories of those you've impacted. That's how you know your presence had value. It's when your absence leaves an imprint that can't be ignored, when silence carries your name, when distance doesn't erase your energy, but amplifies its meaning. So when life calls you to step back, don't fear it. Embrace it. Let your absence do the talking. Let it remind the world and yourself just how powerful your presence truly was. Energy is currency. Protect where you spend it. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every word you speak, and every action you take requires energy. It's your most valuable form of wealth, because once you spend it, you can't get it back in the same form. Money can be earned again. Time can be reorganized, but the energy you give away without intention, especially to people, places, and problems that don't serve your growth, is gone forever. The truth is, most people are not tired because they've done too much. They're tired because they've invested their energy in too many things that don't give anything back. They give and give, hoping for appreciation, validation, or change, but end up drained and resentful because their energy went where it wasn't respected. Your energy is your life force. It's what fuels your creativity, your confidence, your drive, and your presence. The quality of your life is directly tied to where and how you spend it. Just like money, if you don't have a budget for your energy, it disappears without you realizing it. You can't keep spending on emotional debt, on people who drain you, on arguments that go nowhere, on self-doubt that eats your confidence, on trying to fix what doesn't want to be healed. Energy wasted is potential delayed. You can't build a meaningful life if your inner battery is always on empty. Protecting your energy begins with awareness. You have to start noticing what elevates you and what exhausts you. Who do you feel lighter around, and who makes you feel small? What activities bring you peace, and what leaves you anxious or numb? Most people ignore these emotional signals, but your energy always tells the truth. When your mind says, it's fine, but your body feels heavy, it's not fine. When your gut tightens before a conversation, when you leave a place feeling empty, those are signs you're overspending your energy where it's not respected. Every interaction in your life is an exchange. You're either being energized or being depleted. Some people add to your fire, others dim it. Some situations inspire you, others consume you. The challenge is that we often stay in draining spaces out of habit, guilt, or fear. We tolerate people who disrespect our boundaries because we don't want to be called selfish. We stay in environments that suffocate us because we've convinced ourselves that endurance is loyalty. But protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's not about avoiding responsibility. It's about maintaining the strength to fulfill your purpose. Imagine you start each day with a limited amount of energy, say 100 units. How you spend them determines your emotional and mental balance. You spend 10 units worrying about the past, 15 units overthinking something that might never happen, 20 units trying to please people who don't appreciate it, and 30 units comparing your journey to someone else's. By noon, you're already exhausted, not because the day was too long, but because you spent your emotional wealth on what doesn't pay you back. Now imagine what happens when you redirect that energy to growth, to gratitude, to creating, to learning, to healing. You start to rise not because the world changed, but because you stopped leaking your power. Every successful person, every grounded soul understands this principle. They treat their energy like a bank account. They know when to invest, when to withdraw, and when to walk away. They surround themselves with people who multiply their energy, not drain it. They guard their mornings, their focus, their peace. They understand that not everything and everyone deserves access to them, because every connection is a transaction. Some people deposit joy, inspiration, and encouragement, while others withdraw your time, focus, and peace. If you want to thrive, you have to know the difference. Protecting your energy doesn't mean building walls. It means setting filters. It means learning to say no with love, to detach from what doesn't align, to prioritize your emotional and mental health over external approval. You don't owe everyone your attention. You don't owe every call a response or every invitation a yes. The moment you start treating your energy like gold, you'll notice how many people only liked you when your energy was free. You'll notice how many situations only benefited from your lack of boundaries. Once you begin to value your energy, the world starts valuing it too. Energy flows where attention goes. If your attention is scattered, your energy will be too. That's why focus is power. When you focus on what truly matters, your energy compounds. It grows stronger, more intentional, more magnetic. But when your focus is consumed by distractions, negativity, and unnecessary drama, your energy fragments. You lose your inner rhythm. You start living reactively instead of creatively. Protecting your energy means taking control of your focus, guarding your mind from noise, and refusing to be pulled into every emotional storm that passes by. There will always be people who feed off your light, who see your giving nature as an endless supply. There will always be situations that tempt you to waste your power, arguments on the internet, gossip that adds no value, proving yourself to people who have already decided not to see you. You have to rise above that. You can't let emotional vampires feed on your frequency. You can love people deeply and still set boundaries fiercely. You can be kind and still say no. You can be understanding and still choose distance. Your peace is expensive. Protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. The way you manage your energy determines your health, your relationships, your clarity, and your success. You can't pour from an empty vessel. You can't inspire from exhaustion. You can't serve the world if you're constantly being drained by it. The most powerful thing you can do is learn when to retreat, recharge, and realign. You are not weak for needing rest. You are wise for recognizing your limits. Energy protection is not about isolation. It's about intelligent conservation. Every time you pull back your energy from what drains you, you create space for what empowers you. You attract better experiences, healthier connections, deeper peace. Your life becomes a reflection of your inner balance. And the people who truly love you will understand your need for space because they want to see you at your best. The ones who only love your availability will see your boundaries as an inconvenience. And that's how you'll know who's truly for you. So as you move through life, start thinking like an investor. Ask yourself before every commitment, is this adding to me or taking from me? Does this exchange expand me or shrink me? Is this spending worth the cost? Because energy, once spent, doesn't return the same way. Spend it wisely on creation, on love, on peace, on growth, on people who light your fire instead of dimming it. Protecting your energy is not about fear. It's about mastery. It's knowing your worth so deeply that you refuse to bankrupt your soul for temporary approval. It's understanding that your energy is the foundation of your power, your influence, and your impact, and only when you guard it fiercely can you live fully. Distance creates clarity and exposes truth. When you are too close to something, you can't always see it for what it truly is. Emotions cloud your judgment, attachment blinds your perception, and routine keeps you stuck in patterns that no longer serve you. But the moment you create distance, physical, emotional, or mental, you begin to see things from a new lens. It's like stepping back from a painting. Up close, you see only the strokes, the colors, the chaos. Step back, and suddenly, the picture makes sense. Distance doesn't disconnect you from life. It connects you to truth. Most people fear distance because it feels like loss. They equate space with separation, silence with rejection, and solitude with loneliness. But distance isn't punishment. It's perspective. It gives you room to breathe, to see, to understand. When you're too entangled in a situation, it's easy to confuse familiarity with love, comfort with peace, and chaos with passion. But when you step back, the fog lifts. You start to notice who's been genuine, who's been pretending, what habits serve you, and which ones sabotage your peace. Clarity never arrives in the noise. It arrives in the pause. Distance is a truth filter. It reveals intentions without words. When you stop over-explaining, stop chasing, Stop trying to force understanding. You see what remains when your effort is removed. Some relationships fall apart not because they were toxic, but because they were one-sided. When you pull back your energy and someone disappears, that's not abandonment, that's exposure. You learn who was connected to your essence and who was connected to your presence. The people who value you will still feel your energy even when you're not around. The ones who are only attached to what you gave will vanish the moment you stop giving. Distance exposes that difference. In a world that constantly demands your attention, choosing distance is an act of power. It's saying, I need space to think, to realign, to see things clearly. You can't make sound decisions when you're overwhelmed. You can't heal when you're surrounded by the same patterns that hurt you. Sometimes the only way to understand a situation is to leave it for a while. Step outside of it, observe it not from the heart that aches, but from the soul that knows. When you create that separation, your intuition gets louder and your vision gets sharper and your boundaries become clearer. Clarity requires quiet. The noise of constant connection, conversation, and confrontation keeps you in confusion. Everyone wants to talk, explain, justify, and prove. But true understanding doesn't come from talking. It comes from silence. The moment you stop trying to fix everything, people reveal their true colors. The moment you stop texting first, stop checking in, stop apologizing for things that weren't your fault, you begin to see who was there because they cared and who was there because you made it easy. That silence becomes your filter and the distance becomes your teacher. Sometimes you have to pull back from people not because you hate them, but because you love yourself enough to protect your peace. You need time away from the noise to reconnect with your truth. When you're constantly available, constantly involved, you lose your sense of self. You start absorbing other people's emotions, their energy, their expectations. You start living by their definition of right and wrong. But when you step away, when you create that sacred space, you remember who you are. You start to differentiate your voice from theirs, your feelings from theirs, your path from theirs. That's how you reclaim your identity, by standing alone for a while. Distance is also a mirror. It reflects the state of your relationships and the strength of your foundation. A connection built on mutual respect doesn't crumble under distance. It grows stronger. But a connection built on convenience collapses when the proximity fades. If someone only values you when you're close, that's not love, it's dependency. True connection doesn't demand constant proof. It respects space, it understands silence, it grows in absence. The people meant for you won't need to be reminded to stay. They'll stay because they see your worth, not because they need your presence to feel whole. When you take distance from your daily routines, clarity about your purpose emerges. You start to see where your energy has been misplaced. You notice which habits build you and which ones drain you. You become aware of how much of your life you've lived reacting instead of creating. Distance gives you the chance to realign your direction. It allows you to ask, am I doing this because it fulfills me or because it's what I've always done? That question can shift your entire path. You can't evolve if you never step back to observe where you are. Distance also reveals how much you've grown. When you step away from environments that used to define you and then revisit them later, you can feel your transformation. What once triggered you no longer does. What once felt essential now feels heavy. You realize that growth often happens in the silence between chapters. When you distance yourself from old versions of yourself, you make room for who you're becoming. You can't find clarity while staying in the same place that created your confusion. You have to move away, not to escape, but to expand in every area of life, love, and career, friendships, goals. Distance has its role. When you take time away from a relationship, you see whether it's built on connection or comfort. When you take a step back from your work, you see whether it's driven by passion or pressure. When you create distance from your thoughts through meditation or reflection, you see which ones are truth and which ones are fear. Distance gives you objectivity. It removes emotional bias and replaces it with wisdom. The most profound clarity often comes after withdrawal. When you step back from what's been consuming your attention, you start to see patterns that were invisible before. You start connecting dots, understanding lessons, and realizing that what felt like loss was actually redirection. The people who left made space for better energy. The opportunities that passed were never meant for your current version. The quiet that once scared you now feels like home. Distance transforms confusion into understanding and understanding into peace. You start to realize that not everything deserves a reaction. Some things resolve themselves in your absence. Some conflicts don't need your words. They need your silence. Some situations don't require your involvement. They require your detachment. Distance is not avoidance, it's awareness. It's choosing not to participate in cycles that drain your clarity. It's understanding that sometimes walking away is the only way to see the truth of what you've been walking in. The more you practice distance, the sharper your discernment becomes. You begin to see beyond appearances. You notice intentions behind actions, energy behind words, motives behind gestures, and you no longer get fooled by charm or confused by mixed signals. Distance gives you the emotional space to process things without pressure. It gives you time to listen, not to others, but to yourself. That inner voice, when it gets drowned out by noise, becomes clear again. And when you hear it, you realize that clarity was never lost. It was just buried under too much closeness. So when confusion surrounds you, when emotions blur your vision, when you feel lost in noise, don't push harder. Step back, breathe. Create distance. Let things unfold without your constant interference. In that stillness, and the truth you've been searching for begins to surface, piece by piece, quietly and clearly, revealing what was always there, but never seen while you stood too close. Stepping back in power reclaims your peace and respect. There comes a time in every person's life when they must learn the strength of walking away, not out of weakness, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You reach a point where you realize that continuing to fight for understanding, forcing your worth to be recognized, or trying to fix what refuses to change only steals your peace. The power you once used to prove yourself begins to transform into the power to protect yourself. That's when stepping back becomes a declaration, not of defeat, but a dignity. It's a moment of truth when you say, my energy, my peace, my self-respect mean more than your approval. When you've given your best to a situation, when you've tried to communicate, to compromise, to be consistent, and yet things remain heavy, the strongest thing you can do is step back. Not to punish anyone, but to protect your own soul from exhaustion. You cannot keep pouring into a space that leaks your energy. You cannot keep standing in a place that diminishes your worth. Sometimes peace doesn't come from resolution. It comes from removal. When you remove yourself from environments that no longer honor your growth, you give yourself room to breathe again, to think again, to remember who you are outside the chaos. Stepping back is not an act of running away. It's an act of coming home to yourself. It's saying, I refuse to keep losing myself trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding me. It's saying, I refuse to let my boundaries be optional. People who are used to your constant presence may call it distance. People who have benefited from your lack of boundaries may call it selfishness. But you know better. You know that reclaiming your peace is not abandonment. It's alignment. You cannot serve your purpose when you're constantly living in reaction to other people's chaos. When you step back, you reclaim the ability to see things clearly. You start to notice who only reached out when they needed something, who respected your limits, and who felt entitled to your time. You begin to see patterns that were invisible when you were too close. The act of stepping back reveals truth that presence often hides. It shows you who stands beside you when you have nothing to give. It shows you who values you beyond your usefulness. Respect begins to return the moment you stop chasing it. When people realize they can no longer access your energy at their convenience, and they are forced to face the weight of your absence. That's when they start recognizing the value of your presence. Peace is not found in control, it's found in release. You cannot control how others treat you, but you can control how much access you allow. When you stop fighting for attention, start protecting your energy, you take back your power. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop begging for understanding. You stop tolerating disrespect disguised as love. The moment you step back, you shift the energy. People either rise to meet you with respect or fall away because they cannot handle your strength. Either way, you win because peace is the reward of self-respect. Most people think power is about dominance, but real power is about restraint. It's the ability to walk away when everything in you wants to prove a point. It's the ability to choose silence when chaos invites reaction. It's the ability to say no without guilt, to say enough without apology. Stepping back teaches you that not every battle deserves your presence. Some things resolve themselves the moment you withdraw your energy from them. When you stop feeding negativity with attention, it starves. When you stop chasing validation, it loses control over you. Peace begins where the need to prove yourself ends. Reclaiming your peace also means reclaiming your boundaries. For too long, many people live in a cycle of overextending themselves, saying yes when they mean no, giving second chances to people who don't deserve the first, tolerating disrespect just to keep the peace. But that's not peace, that's self-betrayal. True peace comes when you learn to say, this no longer serves me. It's when you stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never built to hold your light. It's when you finally understand that you don't owe access to anyone who doesn't respect it. You teach others how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you walk away from. Stepping back also restores balance. When you're always available, always trying, always showing up, and people begin to take your presence for granted. They stop listening to your words because they assume you'll always be there to repeat them. But when you step back, you create space for accountability. Your silence becomes the loudest statement. Your absence becomes the mirror that forces reflection. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain. The distance does it for you. That's the power of stepping back in dignity. It commands respect without demanding it. And the beauty of stepping back is that it reconnects you with your own rhythm. When you stop over giving, you have time to nurture your spirit again. When you stop chasing what drains you, you rediscover the joy in simplicity. You start waking up without that knot in your chest. You start sleeping without rehearsing conversations in your head. You begin to move differently, not from anxiety, but from awareness. You start realizing that peace isn't something you find. It's something you create by what you walk away from. Stepping back doesn't mean you no longer care. It means you care differently. You care enough to not lose yourself while caring for others. You care enough to let things unfold naturally instead of forcing outcomes. You care enough to love people from a distance when being close only causes harm. There's maturity in knowing when closeness becomes costly. There's power in letting go with grace instead of resentment. You can still wish people well while protecting your own well-being. That's not bitterness, it's balance. Sometimes the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will try to guilt you for stepping back. They'll say, you've changed, you've become distant, you've stopped caring. But what they really mean is that you've stopped tolerating what drains you. They're not used to the version of you that chooses peace over people-pleasing. But the truth is, growth always looks like distance to those who refuse to evolve with you. Don't shrink yourself back into comfort just to make others feel secure. And the respect you gain from walking in peace is far greater than the approval you lose from walking away. When you begin to live with this awareness, your relationships change. You stop chasing chemistry and start seeking compatibility. You stop begging for attention and start valuing reciprocity. You stop trying to fix people and start focusing on your own healing. You realize that peace isn't found in others. It's found in your boundaries, your focus, your stillness. When you stop being reactive to every external disturbance, you begin to live from your center. That's where true power lives, not in control, but in calmness. The world will always test your boundaries. It will always send situations designed to pull you out of your peace. Every time it happens, You have a choice, engage or step back. Each time you choose to step back, you reinforce your self-respect. You prove to yourself that you don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to fix every misunderstanding, and you don't need to respond to every criticism. The less you react, the more powerful you become. Peace becomes your protection, and boundaries become your armor. Stepping back is not a sign that you've given up. It's a sign that you've grown up. It's realizing that not everything requires your energy. Not every storm requires your presence. Not every connection requires continuation. The more you mature, the more you value silence over chaos, solitude over drama, and peace over popularity. You stop chasing explanations and start trusting endings. You stop demanding closure and start creating space. Because at the end of the day, peace and respect go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. And every time you step back in power, you remind yourself that your life belongs to you, your peace belongs to you, and your respect begins the moment you decide you are no longer willing to lose them for anyone. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe.